Hi everyone! In the previous screencast, I showed you how we can use the Fetch API, but then we talked a little bit about browser support. So if I go to Can I Use and search for Fetch, it does work on all modern browsers, but there's a big chance you might have a user on iOS Safari 10.2, or maybe iOS Safari 10, not 10.1, which doesn't have Fetch. This shouldn't stop you from using Fetch because it's almost supported everywhere. And I don't really like the idea where you always use the polyfill for fetch, because all of these users on modern browsers will be penalized, and because they'll be loading like 8 kilobytes of a polyfill. In case you don't know, a polyfill is JavaScript code that tries to make the fetch function work on browsers where it's not supported. So here's an example of GitHub's own actually fetch polyfill. So this is a fetch polyfill developed by GitHub, and you can find it here. So let me show you how you can use that, how we can use conditional polyfill loading using a tiny library that I've developed, and it's called Promyfill. So Promyfill is less than 500 bytes, and it's a promise-based conditional polyfill loader. Let me show you how it works. First of all, I'm gonna just grab the code for it. So because it's less than 500 bytes, I'm simply gonna copy paste it into my code. But maybe for bigger projects, that's probably not a good idea. But here I want to keep everything into one file. So that's the Promyfill here. And let's see how we can use it. So first of all, I need to decide on a fetch polyfill. So it's like in case fetch does not work in the browser, I need to have some kind of fetch polyfill. So I'm going to use the one from GitHub. So you cannot really click on row and use this one, but there's a trick. You can do row get rid of this, and that's like a CDN that you can use in your projects, and you can see the raw sushi icon here. I'm gonna click copy this one, go back to my code, and this is the fetch polyfill that I'm gonna use in case fetch is not supported in this browser. And then I use Promyfill, and that's Promyfill here. And first of all, I need to give it a test. Here's an example of a test. So I can open my app here from yesterday and let's refresh. Okay, so if I do fetch in window, this is going to return true because window.fetch is supported. So let's use this as a test. I can do fetch in window. That's the test, which could return either true or false. And then as a second argument, I'm going to pass in the fetch polyfill. So that's basically how you use it. This is the Promyfill, and it's a promise. So I need to resolve this. And the idea is that as soon as this promise resolves, you will have access to the fetch method. If it's already supported from the browser, then you'll use the native fetch. If not, then it's gonna lazy load the fetch polyfill that you specified. So let's see this a bit in action. I'm gonna go back to the browser, refresh, and you can see here, if you go to the network tab, we've got localhost, this is the index.html, app.js, and then we do the fetch to JSON placeholder users. So why is that? We didn't need to load the polyfill because window.fetch is already supported. Now, I'm gonna write code that you should never write except when you want to test other scenarios. And the other scenario is when fetch is not supported in the browser. So just temporarily, we're gonna say cleanup when done, delete window.fetch. So I'm basically removing the fetch method from the browser because I want to see what happens if somebody opens, say, an old iOS Safari. And basically after that, if you do console log fetch in window, this is going to return false. Refresh. It did return false, and it took a little bit more time. Let me show you what happened. This is the index.html, which loaded the app.js, which then blocked and loaded the fetch.javascript polyfill before it was able to do the fetch to JSON placeholder users. So that's the thing, you only penalize users on old browsers, which should be around 5% of 10% or 10% of your global users. And all other users on modern browsers will not need to load this polyfill. That's why I like this strategy a lot. And now I want to show you one more thing. Let's go to the index.html and let's assume we want to have some kind of functionality where if you click on the logo, we load something else. So I'm gonna do it here, say find the logo, add event listener, say click, and then inside of this I'm gonna do fetch to say same URL, but instead of fetching the users, I'm gonna fetch a list of posts like this. So can we use fetch here or not? This is again the same dilemma, but you don't want to use Promyfill twice because you end up loading the polyfill twice. And this is a place where you can use deferred. So I'm gonna do const is, or just, yeah, say fetch ready, and that's the deferred, fetch ready. And this will basically only load the fetch polyfill once, and later on you can wrap your code with fetch ready.then, which kind of guarantees that you'll have access to fetch here. And you can also do the same here, so fetch ready.then, and that's basically it. So let me show you now. On modern browsers, this is gonna load the app.js, the users. If you click here, I'm gonna go out of it because I added a click. Fresh. Whoop, it's not working. Oh, I have a, maybe I didn't save here. Oh, I have a typo. Okay, yeah, so I had a typo. Let's go to network tab, click, and it directly loads the post. We didn't need to load the polyfill. And now let's go back to the scenario where I'm gonna delete window.fetch to see what happens on other browsers. And if I refresh, you can see this is the fetch polyfill loaded here. This is the users. And if I click now, it just directly loads the posts because this fetch ready has already resolved and it has already deleted, already loaded the polyfill. Make sure to delete this one, and that's basically the video for today. Make sure to subscribe as I'll be releasing a lot of more videos very soon. Thank you.